You are not speaking. So we'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so here's a look at the agenda that we will try to get through today. In just a moment, we'll go around the virtual room and ask folks to briefly introduce themselves. We're then going to give you some information on DOE's Marine Energy program, provide some background on NREL's workforce development and STEM project, introduce you to the Marine Energy Collegiate Competition, and then we'll get into small breakouts where we'll be soliciting your input so that we can strengthen the competition and give students the best educational experience that we can. The ultimate objective of today's workshop is to get your feedback and find out how we can make the MECC better for students, educators, and industry alike. Right now, I'll go through the list of attendees and ask one at a time for you to unmute yourselves and state your name, location, and your affiliation. So I'm just going to call on people one at a time here. So if we could start with Courtney Behringer.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, my name is Courtney. I am a graduate student at Oregon State University, and I am one of the team leads on the Oregon State MECC team.
Great, thank you. All right, George.
Hi, George Bonner, Director of the North Carolina Renewable Energy Program on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and I'm also here representing or as a member of the National Hydropower Association Marine Energy Council leadership team.
Bree.
Hi, I'm Bree Menlin. I'm with the Hydropower Foundation and also work closely with NREL on our STEM to workforce development project. So happy to be here and get to know you folks.
Maria Isabel.
Hi, everybody. Maria Isabel Carnashelli. I'm faculty at the University of New Haven. We participated in the Wind Collegiate Competition, and so we're listening in and learning about the Marine one.
Thanks. Is it Karen Terrell?
It's Karen. My name is Karen Terrell. I'm with the National Energy Education Development Project, or NEED as we're called. We've done some curriculum partnership with NREL and National Hydropower Association. We have some more that's coming up with the STEM workforce development. So I'm just really here to learn a whole bunch of stuff.
Thanks. Sigdam?
Hello. So I'm Chidama Khan from University of North Florida. I'm an assistant professor there, and I'm basically leading the team of 7 students for the competition.
Clay.
Hi, I'm Clay Good with the Renewable Energy Alaska project. I'm a STEM educator here, working on energy literacy from K through Gray. I'm also the regional energy catalyst for the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, helping communities in Southeast Alaska toward their goals of energy independence.
Wonderful, thank you. Maddie.
Hi, my name is Maddie Kraus. I'm a business support professional with NREL, and I've been helping run the Marine Energy Dialogue workshops.
Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer Daw. I'm a senior researcher at the National Renewable Energy Lab, and I work with many of the lovely folks at NREL that have already introduced themselves on this overall portfolio looking at STEM and workforce issues for both hydropower and marine energy.
Elise.
Hi, this is Elise. Sorry, this is Elise DeGeorge, and I work here at NREL as well in the water power group, helping support these water STEM projects. I also work on workforce projects, including the collegiate wind competition on the wind side. Thank you.
Eric.
I'm currently an adjunct professor at Webb Institute. They have not entered the competition, so I'm following along with interest. Formerly a convener for IEC committee.
Thanks, Eric. Fang. Hope I said that right.
Hi, this is Feng from Virgin Tech. I'm a research associate at Virgin Tech in the department. I work on vibration energy harvesting, and I'm participating in MECC 2021 competition, and I'm here to look forward to see more about the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ford?
Yeah, hi. Ford Ames here with Ocean Wave Energy Company, listening in.
Michelle?
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Fogarty. I'm a researcher at NREL in our water power group. I'm mostly doing marine energy resource characterization work, and I'm on the MECC organizing team.
And Jean-Yu, I'm sorry, I just butchered that.
Hi, my name is John Huang. You pronounced correctly. Thank you. I'm a grad student from Virginia Tech, and I'm one of the team leader from Virginia Tech too. So today I'm just participating and probably give some advice and feedbacks. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Allison?
Hi, my name is Allison Johnson. I work for the Department of Energy's Water Power Technologies Office. I'm the office's lead for engagement and outreach, and in that role, I also have the good fortune of working with the NREL STEM team, the Hydropower Foundation, which is a part of that team, and many others who are doing some really awesome STEM and
Thanks, Allison. Allison, your mic is like really faint. At least it's, I can't hear that well, but I know when you're speaking in just a little bit, maybe we'll want to make an adjustment to that.
Sure. I'll connect my phone.
And Luis.
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now, Ariel?
Yeah, how's it going?
Aloha. Yes, my name is Luis Vega, and I was recently asked by a group from Mexico and Dartmouth College to advise them regarding ocean thermal energy conversion. And so I'm here to learn what it is that we're supposed to do for this project. First day.
It's good to see you. Thanks. All right, Marla.
Hello, everybody. It's Marla Barnes from the National Hydropower Association, NHA. Looking forward to participating. We work a lot with the marine energy community, and think what this project is all about is wonderful.
Thanks, Marla. Ben?
Hey everybody, Ben Maurer from NREL. I work in the water power program. I work on this MECC as a technical advisor, and I also work on some of the other prizes for the water power program. So that includes the Ocean Observing Prize, for example.
Murphy?
Hello, I'm a recent graduate from North Carolina A&T. I now work with OCG Offshore Wind Energy Company. I recently participated in the competition, so now I'm just watching to see where it goes next.
Cool, thanks. Peter?
Hello, my name is Peter Hubert. I'm an electrical engineering student, and I applied last year to work in the competition. I didn't get it, but I was interested to hear what people had to say about how the competition went and how that led to possibly finding a career in research.
Great, thanks. Deborah?
Hi, I'm Deborah Rose. I'm filling in today for Andrea Copping from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and I'm a research associate supporting the marine energy team.
Thank you. Bob?
Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Thresher. I work in water power, wind. I've been at NREL a long time and done a little teaching before that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. All right, Nathan.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Tom. I'm also with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I support the Marine Energy group here and am part of the organizing committee for the MECC.
And Steve?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Winke. I'm a senior manager at Avista Utility
based in the state of Washington, and I'm also president of the Hydropower Foundation. So looking forward to the session here. Thank you.
Great, thanks all. And I've gone through the list, but if there's people that joined after I got to your name, maybe if you want to just take yourself off mute and introduce yourself quickly, that would be great.
I am Adbeto Shoafmuja. I'm a PhD student at Virginia Tech. I competed in the first MECC competition that was held last year, and we finally completed it, I think, around June because of COVID, thereabout, or July. I got this invite 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and I decided to join because I'm always interested in renewable resources. It's a field of research currently.
Wonderful, thanks. Is there anybody else that I missed? Okay, great. Well, let's go to the next slide then. And I'm going to pass this off actually to Allison Johnson from DOE's Water Power Technology Office. So Allison, if you're ready, we're good to go.
Yeah, can you hear me okay this time?
Yes, much better.
Perfect. Yeah, so in case you couldn't hear me during my introduction, I have the good fortune of representing sort of the office in this discussion today, and I also work very closely with the folks at NREL and Bree with the Hydro Foundation on really all of the STEM and workforce development activities that they lead on the Water Power Office's behalf. So I know we've got a mix of people here, some students, some faculty, some people with a lot of information or a lot of background in marine energy, and some maybe with less. So I'm just going to serve to sort of baseline us with why, the Water Power Office at DOE cares so much right now at this moment about the future of the marine energy workforce, and give some context for, why we've stood up this competition. So yeah, as you can see on the slide, marine energy, when we use that term, we're referring to a number of resources, both in, the ocean and sea environment, as well as river current. The technologies that exist today to harness this resource are pretty diverse. We are, good number of years away, I think, before we have true kind of technological convergence here. That's even more true for specific resources like waves. But that's not unusual. A lot of other, especially renewable energy technology fields have gone through kind of that same R&D process. So that's why, there's still a very important role and need for government R&D support in this field. I'm sure that's a statement I don't really have to emphasize too much for this group. But next slide, please. And, the resource potential here is massive, to say the least. The visual you're seeing on the screen here is from a new report from NREL, and I know Michelle, who's on the line, was one of the authors of this report. I really encourage you to go look at the report if you're looking for kind of the latest and greatest in terms of resource estimates. It's the best resource for the resource estimates that exist. But really, the size of the opportunity is so large, and if we can even figure out how to harness a small fraction of the marine energy resource in the U.S., it could really be an important, another important source of clean energy, especially as we, try to work under the Biden-Harris administration to decarbonize our grid. That is definitely a focus right now of the department. Is the next technologies needed to help us get to a fully decarbonized power sector and a fully decarbonized energy or economy at large. Next slide, please. But marine energy is not only an attractive resource for thinking about the grid. It is an attractive resource thinking about the grid, especially in remote and coastal communities, given that these resources tend to be a lot more predictable than, variable renewables like wind and solar. Tides in particular are completely predictable. And so, these are sources that can really help to smooth out the power grid if we can, bring the cost down. But as I said, it's not just an interesting resource when thinking about the power grid. The visual you're seeing on your screen right now is from our Powering the Blue Economy report. So you've probably heard that term before. You've at least maybe heard it as a theme for this competition. Really, as an office, we're looking at marine energy and its unique potential to serve a number of important economic markets, but also scientific missions, both near sea and out at sea, in addition to, community grids, thinking about, ways that marine energy can actually displace, in a lot of cases, expensive diesel. That's another just really exciting example of what marine energy can provide. And so we're not here to say that we think that it's a better resource in any way than other renewable energy resources, but we certainly think that it provides certain benefits and some characteristics that make it a really interesting and exciting resource for very particular applications, especially in the blue economy. Next slide, please. And so we have, a long history at DOE, obviously, of working with universities. In the Water Power Office in particular, I will say the Marine Energy program was pretty much founded by, just first setting up these national marine renewable energy centers at different universities. It was literally the first funding opportunity that DOE put on the streets related to marine energy. So the first three that I think some of you might represent these universities or be familiar with them. In Hawaii, FAU is also a center. And then we have the Pacific Marine Energy Center, which is made up of Oregon State University, University of Washington, and University of Alaska Fairbanks. Just this past December, I believe it was, we announced a fourth Marine Energy Center at the University of New Hampshire. And so these are just, these are really universities with very strong marine energy programs currently. But we would love to see, other universities really grow their departments, grow their focus, and do what we can to continue supporting, more marine energy research across the nation in the future. Next slide, please. And so just to, I have to love this slide because the message it delivers is very clear. Our office's budget has grown pretty significantly over the years. So as we're, I said, we're looking to really expand kind of the network of researchers that we can work with to find really important advancements for marine energy. That it's also by necessity at this point. Our marine energy program budget has grown, and it's really in a place where, this is a pretty important moment, I would say, for marine energy in the U.S. Next slide, please. So in addition to supporting foundational research and testing programs and a number of other things with our academic partners, we're also building what we think to be a pretty diverse STEM portfolio, thinking of different vehicles and different ways of supporting really the next generation of marine energy enthusiasts. So, the one, of course, we're here today to dive into, water pun intended, is the Marine Energy Collegiate Competition. But we also have set up a STEM portal where we're aggregating existing resources for both students and educators about marine energy. We realize that, it's still such a new technology for so much of the country, and there's no way that, educators, especially K through 12, are going to be able to teach about it if they don't have the resources to use in their classroom. We're also supporting individual fellows through a graduate student research program. We'll be actually announcing the selected fellows for that program within the next week or two. This is a really cool program that we've been able to work on now. I think this is our second year of that program, where we actually fund graduate student researchers to conduct research at their academic institution while working with a host facility. And so the host facilities to date have been either DOE national labs or even industry partners. So we've had a fellow actually work with a marine energy technology developer, Asilla, just as an example. And so if you're interested in that program, it is an annual program. So I'd really encourage you to go read about that online and think about applying for the next round. Next and final slide, please. I feel like this is just such a hot topic still, of course, the new administration and what this means for renewable energy. And I'm sure you all are interested in this as well, so I'd be remiss to not at least mention it. I think you'll see the fourth point on this slide, strong job pathways through the future of water. So we are really thinking that marine energy holds the promise, as the slide says, for jobs in communities that, you know, maybe do need a little bit of economic development, whether they're remote coastal communities or ports in need of revitalization. Marine energy just has the potential to not only enable more economic activity out at sea and yes, more ocean exploration out at sea and a lot of really important scientific missions, but we also think it's a really, really strong way to grow jobs right now in the future clean energy economy. The other points you're seeing on this slide really demonstrate sort of what are the key priorities and roles that we think both marine energy and hydropower, since my office does also fund hydropower, just the key roles that they have to play in the next 4 years and how this fits into sort of the trajectory that we're on under the Biden-Harris administration. Thank you all for taking a few moments to listen to me and for joining us today.
Thanks, Allison. And so if we can move to the next slide, Elise DeGeorge is going to start talking about NREL and workforce development.
Yeah, thank you. And really, Allison covered a lot of this, so that was wonderful. So I am not going to, I'm going to try not to repeat anything that has already been said, but I did want to call out that in this water power workforce development effort, our water STEM project, we focus on, as Allison mentioned, marine energy and hydropower, and we're very much aware of the fact that to handle workforce development activities in these two different areas are indeed we need different strategies and approaches, but we're also leveraging the resources that we have and the lessons that we're learning to really support both of these different water power industries, marine energy being very nascent, and of course, hydropower being around for hundreds of years. And as we talk about the Marine Energy Collegiate Competition today, we'll also be taking notes and figuring out what lessons and observations and recommendations that you provide today that we can also apply into the hydropower space as we think about potentially building up a hydropower competition. So we know that we want to attract people that are innovative and want to explore these new pioneering spaces that Allison discussed. So this is an exciting competition that has been launched and I think has so far been very successful. Please go to the next slide. And our STEM project does cover many of the areas beyond the collegiate competition that we think can help to share lessons learned, to really broaden our reach. And one way in which we're trying to broaden our reach is through development of regional hubs. And we are trying to do that in different regions throughout the country because it's very different to try to attract workforce, the future workforce in the Pacific Northwest as it might be in the Northeast, in marine energy or in hydropower. So we're really trying to customize the information and the messaging and the curricula we're developing with support by NEED, who's on the phone right today, to customize it for specific regions. So that's something that's in the works along with the other existing activities that are shown here on the slide. You can go to the next slide. We have lots of partners. This is very exciting because our reach and our impact is proportional to the amount of different organizations that we have been able to partner with in this important effort. I mentioned, well, you'll hear from Bree from Hydropower Foundation in a couple slides from now. We have a strong partnership with Mystic Aquarium and IKM, the NEED Project, Kidwind, National Ocean Sciences Bowl, Oceans First Institute, and now our newest partnership is with the Bonneville Environmental Foundation in formulating a regional hub in the Pacific Northwest region. More information on that will be forthcoming. And the next slide. And NREL, we are the national lab that focuses fully on renewable energy and energy efficiency, and our marine research. We have a strong group here in marine research about we have 50, 60 people that focus on marine energy projects, and many of those are in the Powering the Blue Economy space, which is the theme of the Marine Energy Collegiate Competition. And the areas in which we contribute are listed here in the bullets below. And of course, today we're focusing on that final bullet, market acceleration and workforce development. And I think it's over. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ariel.
Yeah, back to me. Thanks so much, Elise. All right. So now that we've had an overview of DOE's Marine Energy Program and NREL's Workforce Development and STEM project, we're going to provide some background on the MECC. So the first ever Marine Energy Collegiate Competition was held in 2020 with the purpose of challenging interdisciplinary teams of both undergraduate and graduate students to develop a concept of a marine energy device that powers any application in the blue economy. We've intentionally left the scope of the competition fairly open to allow for participation across academic disciplines, and also noting that concepts created under the MECC could really find success in the nascent marine energy industry. I'll note here that the rules and requirements document that can be found on the MECC website fully details the rules and structure of the competition. I'll also note here that although this is a competition, the organizers are focused above all on ensuring the competition provides a solid educational experience for all team members. Next slide, please. All right, so I know I am a little bit biased, but I think we have an amazing team supporting the MECC from both the Department of Energy and NREL. Jen Garson and Allison Johnson are the competition managers at the DOE's Water Power Technologies Office. I'm the MECC operations manager, and I'm supported by Elise DeGeorge, who has years of experience working on the Collegiate Wind competition. In addition, Betsy Stratton, Michelle Fogarty, Ben Maurer, Nathan Tom, and Jenny Weigel all bring their own technical expertise that has helped shape the competition so far. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Ariel. So this slide just shows the diversity of roles that could be in the marine energy workforce. I think a lot of times you just think engineer, but that's certainly not the only career area that's involved. And so if you look at this slide, you have 3 different phases of sort of project development with planning and development, construction, and operation and maintenance. And each of them list some career or job areas or roles that could potentially be involved. And so that's one of the things in terms of the STEM workforce and marine energy workforce that we're trying to focus on, because in order for these projects to be successful, there needs to be a required sustained and coordinated effort across all of these areas and several industries, educational organizations, and state and federal governments. Next slide. And so for the MECC participants, keeping that in mind, they get to work in an interdisciplinary team, which may mean working across different engineering disciplines, but also incorporating team members that might have a business background or a marketing background. And it might be the first opportunity they've had in their undergraduate career to really work across departments. So that's a great thing and an opportunity. It also provides the opportunity to, kind of get out of just classroom work and do some hands-on learning to connect the things that are learned in the class to actually solve real-world problems and do the doing, which is valuable. There's multiple opportunities throughout the course of MECC for teams to interact directly with industry experts, whether it's on webinars or in the judging phases, or when it's in person, to actually interact at the conference at the end. And the last bullet, part of the requirement is that they do some outreach and some education. And so there's an element of understanding how to make other people interested in this topic and get interested in this topic, not necessarily talking in the engineering speak that they're used to, or the business terms that they're used to, but reaching out to K-12 classrooms or community groups to really put this into plain English and share the excitement about what they're working on. Next slide. This slide is related to the application process for this year's MECC. And so the 5 bullets show the different categories on which they were scored, and just want everybody to take a look at what they are. Certainly, we wanted to see that teams had given some thought and given some planning to all of these categories, including, what were they going to get out of it educationally to do this competition, particularly this year because of the COVID challenges. How were they going to actually organize their team and deal with probably remote project planning challenges? The team diversity and inclusivity was really an opportunity for teams to show how they were going to pull in team members that were from multiple department areas, life backgrounds, and all sorts of trying to take advantage of the opportunities that may already exist on campus. And we had some teams that were really excellent in this area, and they took the opportunity to share their tactics and the methods that worked for them with their other colleagues, which is a great plus and a benefit that these teams get to not only interact with industry and with national labs, but they get to interact with each other because eventually they will become each other's colleagues. And then a smaller piece was the international or institutional support and fundraising, just to think about where were they going to get additional funds if they needed to. And the last piece was connected again to that sort of community outreach and how were they going to share the enthusiasm and energy for the project that they're doing. And I will pass it on to the next person. Thanks.
And Nathan Tom, take it away.
Thank you, everyone. So in case you aren't familiar yet with the MECC, we have on this slide here the main deliverables and different objectives that we're hoping that the teams achieve during the competition. So as you can see here, the students' teams will be required to create a business plan and a detailed technical design of a marketable device that powers any sector of the blue economy. And there's quite a range, so it's pretty open for the teams. We have decided that teams do not necessarily have to start from scratch. They can advance existing technologies, or they can develop a completely new design if they want. We've noticed that some teams come with a lot more experience than others, and so kind of wanted to allow anyone to be able to participate without having to have such a large kind of ramp up time. And, some of the main deliverables that we have here is that the written report and the business plan includes the technical design as well. And then you have the public pitch that they will give for their business plans. And this pitch is given to the panel of judges as well as the written report. And we also want to or we also have that as part of the business plan, that the different teams will also have to reach out to other industry members to refine their concept, get a little bit more idea of how you would take a startup concept and move forward. And as mentioned previously on the other slides, is that this year we're also including a scored component for the community involvement and outreach activities. And then, yeah, we'll talk about this a little bit on the next upcoming slides, but some of the teams can also participate in an optional build and test challenge. And this challenge is scored separately, and any of the teams who are selected to compete in the competition can choose to compete in this challenge as well. And like as I mentioned, we'll get into details in the next couple slides. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Right. So of course we say you have a business plan and a detailed technical design, but exactly what are we asking for the students to provide? So without going into a lot more detail here, but you can see from the slide the various topics that we are hoping that the business plan addresses. And something to note here is that a formal pro forma will not be required for the financial and benefits analysis. The business plan and technical design will reside in a single report that we've capped at 30 pages to make it reasonable for our judges to read. And then when we look at the detailed technical design, again, we have a lot of points here. We're mostly looking to have the students be able to provide engineering drawings, design schematics, CAD models of all the moving and mechanical components so judges have a better idea of what their system is doing and how it would operate in the marine environment. Then we also are asking the teams to provide a really clear idea of what is the goal of the design. So you could be producing electricity, you could be pumping water, you could be generating compressed air, and then how is your design helping to achieve that goal? And how well the design produces power. So here we're kind of letting the teams decide. We're hoping that they do some type of a time or frequency domain analysis to go from whatever conditions they're hoping to have their device work and actually show how much realistic power they think they can get from their system. And of course, we don't want to make sure, or we want to make sure that teams aren't designing things that wouldn't work in the reality. So we also want to make sure that teams show that their device won't break. And so it can basically withstand the operating mechanical and potentially electrical demands of the system. And then finally, of course, one of the important things is to make sure that they really tie in how the power that they're generating, or again, if it's pumped water, how those are meeting the operational needs of the market, and if there's potentially any need for additional storage along with marine energy. So if you can go to the next slide. And new to this year is, as we mentioned earlier, this optional build and test challenge. So teams are able to opt in or not. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult as some schools that are participating don't necessarily have their own tank, but we've done our best to try and partner them with institutions that have these facilities, or trying to find ways they can use other funding mechanisms to find time at maybe more advanced tanks. And we think that this opportunity is really valuable to provide hands-on experience. This is something that was requested a lot in the feedback from last year. And in a few slides later on, we'll also be looking to see how maybe some of you think a in-person or physical competition build and test challenge will be super helpful for following years to make it valuable for the students, the organizers, and everyone else in the marine energy community. And I think the last point is that all of the, oh, that's fine. Go ahead to the next slide. I was just going to mention that the teams get an additional $5,000 of support on top of their stipend that they get for participating in the challenge to help account for the additional costs of having to build and manufacture materials for their design. What we have on this slide here is how we've broken down the scoring rubric, or how we are allocating various points for the teams to accumulate in order to determine the winners. And as we said before, each team will be required to develop a business plan and a preliminary technical design, and each group will be evaluated based on the thoroughness of the plans and how they address each category in these scoring rubrics. And if you want the more detailed scoring rubric in terms of point breakdown in more detail and some little, or how we're defining how those points will be allocated, please download the rules and requirements document for the MECC. And I think, yeah, in essence of time, we'll keep moving on. So if you want to go to the next slide. All right, so I believe everyone has been given this link to be able to go and participate in some of the following polling questions that are coming up. So hopefully if you can take a moment to either type that into your browser or you already have, we can get everyone 15 seconds or so to type that in, and then we'll go ahead and go to the polling questions. And I see it's just was also put in the chat for convenience. So if you want to just go over to the Microsoft Teams chat, you can probably copy and paste that into your web browser. All right, so hopefully everyone's had a second to get into that link. And if we can go to the next slide where the actual question is. So the question that we're hoping to get some feedback on from everyone on this call is to answer this question. It's on the slide, but do you think that the competition should keep an open scope or focus on specific issues and applications? So I said we'll give everyone some time to think about what your answer would be. If you have other ideas or want to provide a little bit more thought behind your answer, feel free to add it to the chat or volunteer to give a little bit more feedback in terms of what you're thinking.
Are people seeing the poll on the website? Yes, mine doesn't show anything either, Maddie.
Yeah, these are just mine, Ariel.
What's that?
I don't see anything on
Okay, yeah,
any questions.
Okay, yeah.
There they are.
There they are.
Now. All right, thanks everyone.
This doesn't feel like a yes/no question, but I am only getting yes/no answers.
We're just asking yes, no, and then Nathan will kind of moderate a discussion on it.
Do we have pretty much all the responses? Having trouble seeing everything too.
I guess what I mean is you're asking either open source or specific, but the answers are yes or no.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the open topic would be, should it stay open? And that would be a yes. Or if we should restrict and confine the actual the topics of the competition, that would be the no. So stay open, yes. Confine, no.
All right, thanks for the pretty definite.
Thanks for the clarification, Ariel. Looks like now everyone has a better idea how to answer the question. All right, so I don't see the numbers changing that much more quickly anymore, so if anyone wants to get their opinion in, please feel free to keep answering. But it does seem like overwhelmingly the answer was yes. So people felt that the competition should keep an open scope. So I would like to see if there's anyone that's willing to volunteer to say, or who answered no, as it's definitely kind of the minority here. You know, specifically what about not keeping it open might be detrimental, or again, if you'd like to share any other thoughts, because it might be more than just a simple yes no question.
And while people are thinking about that, I just want to note that there were some teams last year that I think suggested that it might be easier for a team who's not as familiar with marine energy to have a specific application, a specific device that the competition calls out that they have to work towards. And so that was one of the reasons why we put this question on here, but would love to hear people's opinion on, why it might be easier to keep it open, or reasons that we should make it specific.
I have an opinion.
Yep, please go ahead.
Okay. So a lot of the wave energy devices can be categorized, and what we see are sort of permutations from the categories and a lot of reinvention of things without really looking at what's already been done. So I see a lot of zeal in students and everything and all that, but I also see repetition of old work. And so I think to really coalesce all the varying ideas, we need to sort of probably have more of a dialogue, what's been done. And I know particularly for what we're trying to do here, we could use a lot of help with what we think are some interesting projects, subtopics to a technology. And, we've had interns from foreign countries and some from USA. But I'm just concerned that we'll just keep reinventing wheels. And that's really where I think I would almost be a no here. And really there's such specific subcomponent developments that really need to come together to improve the wave energy industry. And I could go on, I'll stop.
Yeah, this is George Bonner. I definitely see value in having a more focused challenge for the teams to take on, that you might be able to, really increase some innovation in a particular area if it's more closely focused.
This is Clay Good. Working with the National Ocean Sciences Bowl in Alaska over the years, the students have to do a project as well. And we found in our experience, if you ask a focused project, you got projects that all looked and sounded a lot alike. And they all had their merits, but it was sort of monolithic. And then they switched to open-ended projects so we could get more of a flavor of each of the communities and the needs and the resources in each of those places.
The thing is, the waves don't really care what community they're in. They have characteristics that apply universally, and ultimately, I think the industry needs to coalesce to fewer solutions rather than more, and that's where I bring up the redundancy thing. And so now we're getting toward the notion of wave hubs, which is a really great idea, to at least congregate the varying experiments, and that along with landside tank tests, etc., going through the technology readiness levels. It can be very organized, but and then there needs to be a coalescence of all the experiments that have been done. And it's just basically, like I said, not to keep going around. And I mean, just personally, I started with a linear generator in 1978, and I've seen it persist even till today. And it's, I think we can move on from things. And again, I'll stop.
No, I think that's a great conversation, and I think there's a lot of merit in each. And it sounds like maybe to your last point of when you're talking about subcomponents, maybe it's not just the system that's being excited by waves, but you're specifically talking about like a competition that might be focused on a PTO design. Is that what I'm kind of hearing?
PTO and also pattern recognition of wave fields, for example, sensor and control systems, adjustable ballast, connectors, all kinds of technologies. For example, we would like to see quick connect couplings that self-seal when they're disconnected without leaving any protruding ends that could get damaged, that would have self-wiping. And that's just a minor little invention area that somebody could make a company out of. And there's several other facets like that. And then bringing in, let's say, using pressure to move water and electricity to help desalinate it and electrolyze it to make hydrogen and oxygen for reinvigorating dead zones and things like that, using wave energy to pump down air, all kinds of things. And I don't know, it's just, there's so many things to do. It's hard to get stuck on all the varying designs now. There are now about over 400 wave energy companies in the world. And then multiply it by the number of students with great aspirations. But, it's kind of delaying solution implementation, I think.
Okay, and that's a good view on that. It looks like we do have a hand from Peter.
Yeah, hello. I think I have two questions. Was the goal of the previous competition to create a marketable device for the blue economy? I think that's what you're saying is open-ended. Would you feel that in a real research team, are they usually given something much more specific, or are they usually given something as broad as that?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. I think it kind of varies. I think it depends on the focus of your organization. And if your organization is more startup driven and you need to make a product, then you're probably a little bit more focused, or you're going after a specific market. And then maybe a different laboratory that's looking more at the larger, what are opportunities in the powering the blue economy, they might take a more, wider umbrella look. But anyone else can feel free to also add some comments.
And I guess I'll just add a little bit to that. So another one of the reasons why we asked this question is if you look at some of the other technology competitions, the collegiate competitions out there, like the wind collegiate competition, there's very specific design that they're having to work towards and requirements that they're trying to get out of that design. And so to Ford's point, like the marine energy world has not converged on any consistent real technology yet. The wind industry has. So I guess we were just trying to, figure out from people what provides the most value to students, keeping in mind that this is an educational competition. And I do understand, it is interesting knowing that these students can, and we're optimistic that some of the ideas that come out of this competition could, prove to be totally useful in the marine energy industry. Maybe they'll be, the next device that's marketable. But the real context of this whole competition is that this is supposed to be educational and develop a pipeline into the marine energy workforce.
I do see we have a couple of other hands. I see, I believe Courtney's had her hand up for a while, so if we have time for some more questions or feedback, I would go to her.
Yeah, I can share my thoughts. So, yeah, I think going off of Ariel and Fjord's point, I think if you did want to have open, like such as like the solar car national competition or the wind one, and where people are designing towards, I guess that's maybe more specific, designing towards a certain wave energy converter, and you want to say, we want to charge like this light bulb or whatever, do it the most efficiently, and have the competition be ordered that way. And it sounds like that's not where wave energy is at or what the goal of this competition is. And so I think if you're looking to get, if also looking at being more specific with the competition, I don't think it'd be helpful to say like, we want everyone to do oceanographic sensing, or we want you all to do tidal. I think the most helpful thing could be, here's the issues that are out there that need to be solved. Kind of like Fjord was talking about, like, I think just saying generally powering the blue economy, we had to go out there and like find an issue to solve. Whereas we could be presented with the most common and the most important issues on the table right now. Yeah, I think that's all my comments right now.
Thank you. And Ariel, do we still have time to keep discussing? I see there's several other hands up, but I'm not sure if we need to keep moving ahead.
Yeah, let's go for another minute or two, and then we'll move on. But yes, I would love to keep this going.
Can I bring up a point from so many of the schools try to use these competitions for part of our senior capstone design. And for accreditation purposes, ABET requires that the problem that we're tackling be open-ended. And if you focus it too much, so last year when we were part of the wind competition, one of the problems I encountered was trying to state that it was an open design, right? Even though in the end, there were a lot of pre-post restrictions on it. And so that took a little bit away from the students feeling like they were coming up with something innovative and new. So that was my 2 cents on that.
Let's go to one more comment, Nathan, while people are filling out the next poll.
Sure. I saw that Luis Vega and Marcus PC, you guys have had both your hands up for a while, so if you wanted to speak up.
Can you hear me? This is Luis.
Yes, can hear you.
Yes, hi. No, well, I just wanted to point out that wave energy is not the only idea that is being planned by the students. So in my case, they asked me for advice with ocean thermal energy, and that, of course, is much more advanced than wave energy, technically advanced. And what they asked me to help them with, I don't want to, tell them what to do. I want to kind of help them find their own path, hoping that they would arrive to where I wanted to arrive. But I would like them to be open-minded about certain issues, because they also wanted to, in that case, they're going to try to consider an ocean thermal energy conversion plant for a specific site in Mexico. So they have a site already selected with a certain economic background. So it seems to me that in trying to decide whether to produce mostly electricity in desalinated water, they consider mariculture, air conditioning. There should be an open discussion, I believe, till they find their own path. They come up with a decent business plan. And those are my 2 bits.
Thank you. And then I guess maybe real quickly, if Marcus, you wanted to make any comments?
Yeah, no, thanks for the great initiative, and just following up on what the intent of the competition is, to create kind of workforce and interest. I don't know if it was suggested before, but has there been a consideration of maybe including industry, proposing specific topics, and then offering teams a range of different topics that are of interest, then the focus could be more on the technical side, because the industry is, I don't think the industry needs more business plans, but potentially more technical people, just by there's still a lot of R&D ahead of us. So if the goal is to essentially prepare students to then actually land an internship with a company or an entry-level position, maybe a technical angle could be more effective than a business plan that potentially leads them to rather conflicts of interest or other things that make it actually harder to hire them than going forward.
Great. Thanks, Marcus. All right. So I think this is the time, Ariel, that you want us to go to the next question that we have on the screen here.
Yeah, it looks like most people have answered. So yeah, I didn't know if you had specific questions for people on this, Nathan, but again, it'd be interesting to hear people. I don't know, we kind of dabbled into this in the last conversation, but maybe talking through some of the drawbacks on asking the competition to focus on a specific task, whether it's just, can you get your prototype to power a light bulb? And yeah, I don't know if those are legacy hands that are still up there, but people feel free to start the discussion on this one too.
And this is Clay again. I guess I would say if what we're wanting to do is promote interest in geographically diverse places, then having a more open-ended processes and goals would suit that. The gentleman stated earlier that waves are the same everywhere, but where I live in Southeast Alaska, we have 24-foot tides and almost no fetch. And so our students in Alaska, and Southeast Alaska in particular, would be more interested in tidal energy than wave energy. And so I think leaving it more open-ended allows you the diversity of place and what that brings to the competition.
Great, thanks. Anybody else? If not, we can move on, and certainly.
I think we've got a couple of hands up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I don't know, Luis and Marcus, if those are from before or if they're new hand raises. Probably not so much. All right, cool. Well, we will definitely have opportunity to discuss, the contents of the competition in the future during some of the breakouts in a little bit, but perhaps we should move on to, for time's sake, and I think, Ben, you are next.
That's me. Okay, so looking at the 2021 or 2020-2021 timeline for this year's competition, this is an overview on your screen right now, and it starts more or less with the beginning of the academic year, a little bit before the quarters start, right around the time that semesters start, and it revs up mid-fall semester quarter when selections have been made and a bunch of support from the committee and from the MEC kicks in to engage constantly with the different teams. It all culminates with a virtual this year, a virtual ICOE presentation in April. Hopefully future years won't be virtual, but it's anybody's guess at this moment. And then after the ICOE presentation, the business plan, the presentations, and the judging, there's a debrief in the summer. So two things I want to highlight. One are what I just mentioned, that hopefully out years won't be virtual. And the second thing I want to highlight is that this coming year, we're going to be opening the application period for 2022 much earlier. So right around the end of the MECC 21, we're going to open up the 2022 competition so that we can give teams more time to prepare over the summer and into the next academic year, maybe giving a little bit less of a compressed schedule for folks. Next slide, please. Oops. So just wanted to give you a little background on what we're committed to for this competition and what the focus is. We're going to do everything we can to ensure a fair and unbiased competition that includes recruitment of unbiased judges who are both experts in their field and from various backgrounds. All U.S. institutions who are accepted will be eligible to receive that $15K of funding through a subcontract with NREL. U.S. institutions who choose to participate in the optional build and test challenge will be eligible for an additional $5K. Also through a contract. We are very, very painfully aware just how painful the NREL process can be for contracting. And I want to highlight that we're looking at the possibility of administering funds through a prize structure this coming year instead. There are just different channels that we can get money out, and contracts versus prizes have different advantages and disadvantages, and we're looking into that right now. We'll also be incorporating educational opportunities throughout the year for all the teams to participate in, as well as planning events to connect teams with industry and to promote career opportunities. We'll be creating a LinkedIn alumni group, which all the team members can join, and we'll provide any information we have on opportunities to engage with community education efforts. Next slide, please. So teams are expected, obviously, to put their best foot forward, both while preparing their material. Wow, hard word for me to say, evidently. Preparing their material to make sure that they're ready for the competition ahead of them, and during the competition itself, engaging in a professional and in a collegial atmosphere and way. You're expected to take full advantage of the opportunities provided. Learn what's possible through the competition and to work with industry professionals to advance careers in marine energy. And ideally, we want the lessons learned about marine energy to be brought from the competition into the classrooms to spread learnings to younger students and more broadly within the academic environment. It's worth noting that should the $1,500 in seed funding not provide enough to support the necessary resources needed, teams are expected to acquire additional funds outside of that stipend. So if the teams are coming up short, it's up to the individual teams to reach out to the departments or local sponsors, funders to make up that delta. Next slide, please. So this year the challenge is optional. The build challenge is optional and it's scored separately from the rest of the competition. For future years, should this continue to be an optional portion of the competition, or should we move towards making this a mandatory part of every team's participation? That's the poll question. And it appears to be live with the proper answers. So I'll give you all a second to get those answers in. See that folks are already answering. That's great. And rather than bias any answers, I'll wait a couple more seconds here to watch that stop moving before we go out for individual opinions. Great, so taking Nathan's methodology here, for the folks who asked or who answered that the build and test challenge should be mandatory, I actually probably would be in that group. I really value having to put your academic or your conceptual ideas to test and potential failure. Does anyone in that 14% want to share why they answered mandatory and why they think that the team should be required to do the build and test challenge? Or is everybody shy?
I'll talk. I think that students just learn so much from actually trying to get it to work, right? It's one thing to plan it out, is another to struggle when what you think should have worked doesn't work, and how to troubleshoot that. So it's just from a learning perspective, there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? If you look at the development V for systems engineering, there's testing at every phase as you get deeper and deeper into the development process. So that's personally from my perspective, I totally agree with you. Someone else had an idea out there. we've got a hand raised. Let me see if I can get to the.
It's me, Ben.
Oh,
It's
thanks, Bob. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with what you said and the last speaker. I think in life I have learned much more from things that I thought would work, and when I tried to make them work, they didn't. So that's how you learn the most, is by trying an idea and failing, and perhaps working around the failure or modifying your idea. So I think you'll learn more that way.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The student groups that I work with, separate from this competition entirely, even during this year's virtual competitions for their engineering challenge, I'm asking them to do a lot of bench testing and as much water testing as they can for exactly that reason, that it's all well and good when it's vaporware, but when you actually have to put it to the test, then you learn where your thoughts are wrong or incomplete or you're focused on the wrong thing. So thanks, Bob. I agree. For the folks who think that it should be optional, I can see some really great rationale for this too, right? The cost of doing this, not being near a wave tank or a flume or something that's going to be necessary to test, the logistical challenges of just getting something done in time and out there. There's probably a myriad more reasons. So anybody want to volunteer why they answered optional? Anybody from that 79%?
So actually, you kind of answered the reason why I felt it should be optional. I'm just thinking that there are some folks that have great idea out there, but they probably do not have the facility to test these devices on their campuses. And if you make build and test compulsory, then the incentive to want to join the competition might not just be there when they do not really have the facility to maybe build and test some of those devices on their campuses.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't even considered that some of them, it might not be a cost center issue. It might be just they don't have any access at all, and that prevents them from participating. That's a great point. Thank you.
I think to go off of that as well, it depends on how much time you're giving for the build and test. You could be excluding people if the students don't have the bandwidth to be committing to building and testing something. I think given like a year or more, I think you could make it more mandatory, but if for only like 6-7 months, it's better as optional.
Yeah, that's a great point too, right? Like even if we open up this competition in April, some of the team members, some of the student teams still might not be getting revved up until that August, September start for school, depending on whether or not your semester or quarter system. So it still is a really short time window to get all of that done and taken care of, especially if, like the last speaker said, they're not immediately accessible facilities. So yeah, there's definitely an element of time to that. Thank you. I want to give folks another second or two. Luis, I want to make sure that the hand up from you is not on this topic.
No, it is. And once more, I will agree with you if we're only talking about wave energy. But because unfortunately, I'm a vice student with OTEC, so it's a different situation there. I don't think it should be mandatory for that reason. Or you can make it mandatory for wave, I will agree. But for all other ocean energies, I would disagree.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. I don't even know where a student team would test a no-tech device. Yeah, great point. Thank you. Okay. Well, with that, I will turn it back over to you, Ariel. Thanks, everybody, for the discussion.
Yeah, thanks everyone for input. This has been great so far. All right, so this is the last bit of talking at everybody before we get into a more breakout format for the rest of the time. But just a little bit more context on the competition. So yeah, we've been really thrilled with a number of teams interested in the competition so far. We've had applicants from all over the US, Mexico, the United Kingdom, and India. Both the geographic diversity and academic diversity have really been outstanding. In 2020, we had 15 teams participate from the schools that you can see here. Just to let you know that we do allow for teams to be comprised of multiple schools, and a few of last year's teams consisted of 2 or 3 different institutions collaborating together. Next slide, please. And so in 2021, we accepted 17 teams into the competition. Unfortunately, we did have 1 team that had to drop out this year due to COVID, but currently you can see the participating schools on this slide. Again, some teams this year are comprised of multiple institutions. I also want to point out that we have 6 schools participating this year who did compete in last year's competition. It's really just kind of been my hope that those teams can provide guidance and advice throughout the competition to the new schools participating. And something that we'll talk a little bit about in some of the breakouts is on how we can really better facilitate that, just the discussions between teams and that interaction. And just to note that you can read the team stories, the reports from the last year's teams, all on the MECC website. Those are all included there. And next slide. So as we've mentioned, so one of the key objectives of the competition is to allow students to engage with industry representatives and to gain an understanding of the marine energy industry. Some of the ways we've tried to do that is through industry presentations during the monthly team meetings that we have, educational webinars, and by selecting industry experts as judges to evaluate the team pitches. The slide here shows all the presenters and judges we've had so far. Originally, we had planned for students to attend ICOE so that they could network and meet industry members face-to-face, but we've had to switch to a virtual experience these last 2 years due to COVID. I think we mentioned that before, but in case you didn't know, it's been totally virtual to date. I'm really hoping that in 2022 we can get industry and students together, so fingers crossed on that one. And I know some of the folks shown on this slide are on the call today, and I do want to say thank you for your support of the competition, and if anybody is interested who's on the call today in being a judge or a presenter, please do let me know. We are always looking for volunteers. All right, so next slide. So as I just mentioned, one of the ways we're trying to provide industry interaction is through educational webinars. In 2020, we held just one, which was on design methodology, and that was hosted by Dr. Bryony DuPont and Allie Trueworthy of Oregon State University. Based on feedback from the teams, we added 3 more educational webinars in 2021. The 3 were a webinar on wave energy modeling using WEXIM, which was led by Yishang Yu and Nathan Tom of NREL and Kelly Rule of Sandia. Another webinar on developing test plans and ensuring safety in testing was led by Miguel Quintero of Carter Rock, Rick Driscoll of NREL, and Samantha Quinn of Poet and Teamer. And then the last webinar that we had was on customer discovery, which focused on designing to customers' needs. And that was hosted by Jean Redfield of Next Energy. She works to create trainings for the I-Corps program, if you're familiar with that program. So we did pull the teams to try and find out what topics they would like us to cover during the webinars, and have had a pretty good attendance on them so far. But if we can move to the next slide, we're gonna now ask if you could provide us any other topics that you think we should be incorporating into the educational webinars that would be useful for teams to A, be most effective during the competition, but also just help in their learning experience and gain knowledge of the industry. And unfortunately, this one is going to make you think a little bit, and you'll have to actually write some words out instead of just clicking on yes or no. Offshore operations and maintenance. It's great. Larger scale testing. Okay, cool. Project management. I know that a lot of the feedback that we got last year was that since the teams are pretty engineer heavy, having more business education would be helpful. Top issues in the industry. Okay. Cool. And so while people are responding here, which is great, and we'll be taking this information and definitely putting it into the kind of action items for next year's competition. But does anybody want to speak to anything that they wrote or have any burning input here? Fine if folks just want to move on, because I think we're running just a little behind anyways. So please feel free to keep entering these topics into the poll. And like I said, we'll be using this information, and you can talk about them more in your breakout sessions if you did want to express your thoughts a little bit more. But yeah, awesome. It looks like people are putting in some great responses, so thank you. All right, so if we can move to the next slide then. Okay, so yeah, this is the last slide before we get into more questions and breakout sessions, but wanted to show here the main feedback that we've already touched upon a little bit that we've received from last year, and how we're already incorporating that into this year's MECC or future ones. So just kind of going through this, and Ben talked a little bit about this too, with aligning the competition schedule better with the academic calendar. So we, bumped it up a little bit this year to, I think by like a month or so compared to the 2020 competition. But in this next year's competition, 2022, we will be releasing the application in April and selecting the teams in May, with the hopes that they would be able to go into the new academic year with, a team and a senior capstone project already identified. So we did receive lots of requests to add the build and test component, which has been added. There's been lots of requests to help connect teams better with industry. And so, aside from our attempts to try to invite industry to the meetings, I think the intent of this comment really is more on the lines of like trying to get industry to sponsor specific teams, line up internships, provide serve as advisors to the teams. And so I put a note here that that's still in progress, and during the breakouts we'd love to discuss what you guys all think would be most effective there and most useful for the teams. One of the big comments from last year was to facilitate collaboration with other teams, and definitely looking for your feedback in the breakouts on how to best do this. We did add a few team presentations to the monthly calls. We encourage teams to communicate through the Slack channel. We try to just, encourage communication. We organized a mixer event that was like pretty poorly attended. So really looking for better ideas on how to do that, because it sounds like it's something people are looking for, but not necessarily wanting the methods that we've sort of identified as making that happen. Teams last year were unclear on whether they were supposed to advance current technologies or they could start from scratch. And I think some teams might have been surprised when they saw the other teams' presentations on how everybody kind of went ahead with that or approached a new design or advancing one. And so we did clarify that in this year's competition, that it really can be either or, and we didn't want to limit it. We added a scored category for community outreach this year, as we've talked about. IP guidance was, intellectual property guidance was an issue that people had questions about how the competition dealt with intellectual property. And so we tried to clarify that more in the rules and requirements document. Again, looking for more feedback on whether that's been resolved or if people still have questions on that one. People are asking for more resources, educational opportunities. So I talked about the educational webinars, definitely looking for more feedback on what we can do to provide any additional educational opportunities to the teams. And needing help on the business side, again, trying to do that through the educational webinars, but if there's other options, other things that people think that we can do, love to hear about those in the breakouts. And the build and test portion, the schedule is too aggressive. So one of the ways that we're trying to mitigate that is by opening the applications and selecting teams earlier on in this next year. But we'll also take a look at the requirements in the build and test to see if there's things that we can remove or just make a little bit less time intensive for people. All right, so that's the last of our talking. And then if we could go to the next slide, Maddie. So before we go into breakouts, I just kind of wanted to, get an idea from people on what what you're looking to get out of the MECC. As organizers, we know what we're trying to get out of it. As I mentioned, this is, trying to provide an educational opportunity and create a, a workforce pipeline. But yeah, what do you think you're trying to get out of the MECC? I know this answer is going to depend on who you are, whether you're a student, a faculty, industry, and hopefully, it looks like it's open in the poll right now and people are starting to respond. So go for it. Okay, this is great. It seems like, a lot of what people are looking to get out of the competition really is that experience, that awareness of marine energy, just the notion of getting students involved in new technologies, facilitating networking connections. It's nice to know that these are not out of line with what, as organizers of the MECC, we're hoping for as well. Future MRE dreamers, fabulous. Okay, great. And then I think the last polling question before we go into breakouts, Maddie, if you could switch over to that one. What are the current obstacles to participation? Why aren't schools currently competing? And so if you are a school that is currently competing, maybe you could think about this in the context of what would prevent you from competing next year. Or if you know of other schools, friends, students that were interested but didn't apply, maybe what stopped them? All right, limiting spots. Burnout from this competition. Timeline sneaks up, so maybe we could do a better job in just making sure people are totally aware of when the announcement's going to come out for when the applications will open. And before we go to breakout, does anybody want to speak to either this slide or the last slide? Anything that they'd like to share with the group? Testing facility is good.
And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but with all the support that's provided over the course of the competition and the effort that I know the rest of the organizing team, can't speak for myself here, but the rest of the organizing team puts in, I'd be really curious to hear if there are any ways that the person who answered about burnout or anybody else on the call could maybe speak to that in ways that this competition could be arranged to prevent that or minimize that burnout.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think this goes to the point of the varying levels of knowledge about marine energy from the teams. And so I would say at Oregon State, just the recruitment process alone, took a month. And then educating those students who had never even heard of wave energy before, it took a long time. And then you have to also educate people on how to use MATLAB, right? So at each school, there's very few individuals, very few grad students, very few undergrads who know wave energy enough for this competition. And then their burden is to lead the team and to educate all these other people who are new to the team, while also developing a solution to a problem. And so I've talked to the leader from Berkeley as well about this, and the University of Washington team, and there's just so much time in the competition spent on educating people, what even is a wave? How does that even work? What is a PTO? That's just months of the competition, and then you also have to be developing solutions in the meantime. So I think that's way more time, just a whole starting in April and actually doing stuff over the summer would be needed, because you just can't wait till the fall for something that's due in April for this.
Courtney, that's awesome feedback. Thank you. So a couple of quick follow-on questions, if I might. So something like a primer or a Wave Energy 101 or common tools to use for analyzing or designing wave energy devices, something like that that we could package up front and include with the competition materials would help you guys out a bunch there?
Yeah, I think so. Like, we kind of set up a lot of that ourselves. Like, we had professors talk about just the basics of waves, and we had speakers come in and talk about the basics of wave energy. And I would say half of our team had never heard of wave energy before. And I mean, if I look at Oregon State and even University of Washington, I'd say there's less than 20 students at each school who at least have a background in wave energy and are doing work in it. And you can't just get all of them to join the team, right? They have their own research, they're doing their own stuff. So the pool is really very small, and people are interested in learning more about wave energy. And I'm so excited that I have this team, and half the people, now know about wave energy and are like developing all these skills for it. But there is like such a big learning curve to get people. Like, I wanted people to become WEXIM masters, but it's just not doable. So we had to offer a lot of that work to people that already knew WEXIM. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand. And I guess my other follow-up question is, at least for the student team that I work with, that's not associated with wave energy at all. What we've done with that student team is we've taken our internal documents, our old design reports, and some of our internal project management tools that we've developed over the years, and shared those with other teams that want to get into that competition space. Do you think that's something that your team might be interested in doing to help other teams get into this space rather?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think definitely we'd be willing to do that. That's like part of our debrief, hopefully after April. And I think, because this competition is only in its second year, I mean, every year that it grows, you're going to have more students who now have a whole year of experience and hopefully join the team again. But yeah, I think just that it's so new and it hasn't been around for long.
Great. And yeah, thank you again for the feedback. I thought that was brilliant. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Anybody else before we go into breakout sessions that wanted everybody to hear something? All right, so we're going to go into breakouts. I believe Bree is going to put everybody into their breakout sessions. It'll just automatically happen like magic. And then you'll get a link to a Google Jamboard once you're in your breakout session. Am I getting that all correct, Bree?
You should already have the Jamboard link, but we will also put it in each leader will put it in the chat once you're in your small group. But yes, I will magically put you all in your breakout group.
Okay.
Which means that I will also magically bring you back. So Ariel, you just give me a heads up when you're ready.
Yeah, let's give people an honest 15 minutes. I know we ran a little bit over, so that would put us back at 4:52 Mountain Time, and then we can do a quick debrief or out brief, I guess. And so if the breakouts could focus on at least the first 3 questions that are on there, and if you don't get to the rest, no big deal. Everybody has different questions, so it'll still give us a lot of good content. But if you can get to the rest, great, go for it.
Okay, here we go.
All right. Maddie, can you help me out here? I'm not familiar with the Teams breakout. Are we all in our own room now? Do you know?
I believe that we are. And I went ahead and I put the link to our Jamboard in the chat box. There it goes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So hopefully everyone has a chance to be in our Jamboard. And if you haven't used it, just the Google opportunity to basically put little post-it notes on. So if you look kind of on the left-hand side here of the screen, yeah, you can click on text boxes, little sticky notes, and kind of enter whatever you'd like. Saw some traction earlier. And so really, this is a way that it's a way for you to be able to kind of record your answers, and we can look at them later on and share them with other team members. And so it'd be great to spend, the next 5 minutes or so brainstorming and answering and putting down your questions to your answers to the question that we have up on the slide here. And that is, how do we do better in engaging underserved communities and increase diversity in the competition? And this question is definitely geared towards a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that DOE is doing, as well as a lot of other organizations now. And so, yeah, we definitely would like to get your opinion if you maybe work with already these communities, or also just ideas on how we can do better outreach. I think we've saw from the previous discussions that the marine energy community itself is relatively small when you look kind of larger out. So we definitely would like to bring in a more diverse group of people that can bring their own thoughts, their own perspectives, and so we're not missing something, or can find another way to make it useful for another set of stakeholders. So I'll let everyone think about that for a few minutes, and also feel free, if you've put your kind of thoughts on a post-it, a text box, and you want to just kind of voice it out loud for everyone else, feel free to do that too. I'm liking this last one. Can whoever wrote the create compelling educational videos, can I ask what, a little bit more about that? Is it just showing a marine energy converter or a tidal turbine and then describing how they work, or maybe taking a bigger step back and talking about the blue economy and how it needs power generation? Really curious to see what you felt.
Yeah. Oh, Nathan, that's me. Can you hear me? Is this working?
Yep. Loud and clear.
So what I was thinking, some of the documents that were talked about that were just produced by NREL, I think Michelle was talking about just the overall potential in the U.S. for the energy. Okay, so maybe some of those graphics could be put together with video of just a survey of devices, just really quick cut action video of turbines waving, all these different things, people working on them, all different industries. But the point is, and you can get some concepts across in it too, but there's a lot of good content in those static reports that I'm just thinking, well, if you can get it across in a video format and something that can be presented to a bigger audience, that, just you'll grab them with the stuff that when you film this stuff out in the ocean, it's great. You see the stuff with the offshore wind when they come in with the drones, and you get some really good shots. You know, we don't have a lot of stuff that's out there, but I'm just taking some of these static reports, which have a lot of good data, and making them alive. And I just think so. Maybe just get a wider audience that way, and nothing like 30-minute documentary. Just something that I guess I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's YouTube format. What works? I don't know. They're pretty short, right? But yeah, I would say a compelling YouTube video, maybe. So that was what I was thinking there.
Great. No, that sounds good. And we do have a few efforts of, I'm not sure if you've seen them on the STEM website, but day in the life videos where we're profiling some of the engineers and people researching that. But yeah, I can see how, definitely having more videos of things working in the water and just getting students excited about that.
Well, and also the computer simulations are great too in the videos. So even if it's not, and then companies, that's the first, before they even build something, they have beautiful computer simulations. So just imagine seeing rapid fire, everyone's, even the stuff that's already been built and broken. I don't care. There's a lot of good, nice visuals of people's ideas. And yeah, it's even if you just do that and mix it in with stuff that's out in the real world. But the computer visuals are pretty neat, just to get kids like, wow, that's that. Yeah, well, look at it. So we're seeing the computer simulation of something, and then you see the real thing out there. It just gets kids thinking, I want to do that. That's cool.
Oh, definitely. Appreciate that. And yeah, does someone else want to maybe speak a little bit more about their ideas? I think we have about enough time for one more person to speak up before we'd like to make sure we can give enough time for the other two questions. Yeah, kind of, if you don't mind, the person that wrote the purposely court universities and colleges in urban settings, what would be the best way to do that? Because I think sometime we've struggled with is it's finding the right professors or the right research groups in those universities in order for them to be interested and kind of have an interest in joining. I'm just kind of curious if you had an idea how we best could do kind of that targeted outreach.
I don't have anything specific about how you could target that, but I would expect that the professional societies of the specific disciplines you're looking at would have access to the professors or the department heads in those universities. So like I'm in Indianapolis right now, and so I would go looking at the engineering professors or who is in the engineering school at IUPUI. Because that's a big commuter school. There's a lot of kids around here. So that's the kind of thing I would think about.
Great. Thank you. And then I think I'm going to ask Maddie to move on to the next slide. But just before that, I did like how someone said yes to the Connect with the Community College. So yeah, if you'd like to, there's a little shape options. You can little star or do something, or if you want to kind of thumbs up any of these topics too. So if you have a moment to do that, feel free. So yeah, let's go to the next question. All right, so this is a little bit back to one of the polling questions that we had, but we'd like a little bit more discussion here. And so, assuming that we do have in-person testing next iteration or following iterations, so kind of, although we have to be virtual now, if we kind of brought all the students at one location and we were able to test, then, what are kind of the pros and cons that we should be aware of before or to help us plan or think about as we're coming up with the rules, telling students and teams how they should expect this to work. If you're familiar with going to any physical testing at a larger site, procedures, we're dealing with something that has to go in the water. It's not as easy to get in and out. If you're doing electricity, things in the water and electricity don't always match or can be dangerous. So like to get your thoughts on that. It's a good one. Yeah, patience. So I think in the past we have thought about having, I think we called them bullpens, or basically areas where students can work on their devices before they go in the water. But definitely if we have 15 teams that all need to go into the water, it's not like they're all going to be able to get in there right away. They'll definitely have a couple of hours to do their work. So they'd have to definitely practice on how to getting it into and out of the water pretty quickly in order to complete all the testing that they need. Yep, that's a good point. Definitely finding a large enough facility that can accommodate all teams, and that potentially would potentially change with each year if we're trying to move to accommodate, schools on the West Coast, schools on the East Coast, schools inland. Anyone else like to speak up on any of their comments they've put in there? Yeah, networking, being able to see people in person, that's always helpful. Yeah, I'm curious to get the person that's seen other pitfalls can help me avoid some. You would kind of elaborate, like, is it just like, I mean, there might be some cases or teams that do really well and there isn't necessarily pitfalls. So there's something about seeing the failures that help, or?
Yeah, I think seeing the failures is helpful. I think if you see a group encounter an unexpected challenge, then your design is similar, then that challenge is going to exist for yourself as well, and you can kind of avoid it if you're testing after them. You know what I'm saying? Like learning as you
Got
walk.
it. Thank you. And looks like we're running a little bit out of time. So thank you for that. I think those are all great comments. If we can quickly go to the last slide, Maddie, so people would be able to try to add their last few comments before we move back to the larger group. So yeah, this one's a little bit more to the first one question, but how do we engage schools not typically involved in marine energy? So, we have several schools from the last couple of years that some are involved, some are not, and definitely just having more teams that could compete and bring unique perspective, I think is definitely what we're hoping for. So if you have any ideas or suggestions that we should consider for outreach in this next iteration, as we mentioned, the new applications will be opening sometime early April. So definitely when we release the new rules and requirements document for next year, we definitely would then start sending that to different universities, reaching out to professional societies, etc. So if there's anything else you think is worthwhile for us to try so we get more people, or even if you're willing to help us by promoting it within your own communities, that'd be really great. That's an interesting one. Free professional organization memberships. Would we have to say specifically which ones, or if the students or even maybe faculty come in and ask us which ones? I know that prices for being in professional organizations can vary a lot. If students, it's pretty small sometimes.
I think if you have a faculty member that would participate but doesn't really know how to get started, that would be a good way to loop them in.
That's a good okay. All right, what else do we have? Internships. Would that be the person that did internships? Would that be with a company? Would it be with the labs? I'm trying to.
I meant to add more, but I was meaning between having a lot of projects, small projects that could be done within a period of a month or two, or start having more field trips on the place that will engage, wake kids to engage more into marine energy. I know that happened to me. That's why I picked the major I picked, you know?
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate that. And yeah, in the last couple of minutes, I assume we'll be pulled back pretty soon. Anyone else that's put up a post-it kind of want to maybe put a little bit more perspective or speak to it? Maybe this last one, I like the idea of a mentoring program and trying to think about how that could be done. But yeah, feel free to.
Yes, so I posted that one. I thought potentially you could have a school that was already involved, sort of like give advice on where the new school can go for information. They could also provide advice on how they might want to set up their, where they might be able to go for getting their models made or testing done.
Well, that sounds good. I can definitely see the benefit for like newer teams. And do you have any ideas of like what, like I would like to reward like the mentor or the mentor schools. So should they get something extra, or is it you're hoping that it's just people being nice and wanting to help out the community as a whole?
I was hoping that it would be people just wanting to see the future of wave energy flourish. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone else like to make a comment or two? I guess we can try to move on to the fourth question and keep moving ahead until they pull us back. All right, this one's probably interesting to some, and that's always how do we engage students who are not engineers? And I think this question comes a lot of, you know, we do need engineers. There's still a lot of R&D specifically to design devices to powering the blue economy, essentially looking at utility scale still. But at the end of the day, you know, we still do need people that do environmental monitoring. If, you know, we have any hydraulic fluid or something, then, you know, we need to make sure that it's not going to hurt the local environment. Still to permitting, to lawyers. So, you know, what can we do to help maybe bring in more of those other very important. Oh. Everyone's coming back.
Oh.
Well, thank you everyone for your time in my group. Yeah, everybody from my group, appreciate it.
I knew we were going to get snatched back when we least expected it.
Yeah. Whose dog?
Oh, it's always mine.
All right, so I know we just have a few minutes left. So if we could just really quickly go around to any of the highlights of your breakout sessions. I was all alone in mine. I had some really good ideas. I'll share them with people later. But is anybody wanting to go right now, or should I just cold call on people? The session leads.
This is Michelle. I'll go. I think one of the things that we had sort of across all three of our answers was to bring in people from the outside that aren't engineers or aren't necessarily just like straight up business people, to get like different types of energy, like incubator energy in, or just other backgrounds, to try to get students excited about making connections between the thing they're doing right now and the thing they want to do. Kind of came up multiple times.
Awesome, thanks. How about Elise?
Yeah, we focused on a couple of the questions. One was, how do we better facilitate communication? We talked about doing fun things, and I mentioned that we did this trivia night, and that there's a lot of potential there, especially if we kind of couple it with with educational components. So doing also having some activities that incentivize contributions to things like Slack. We talked about Zoom Hangouts, just socializing with an educational component, give them a reason to be there. And then we talked a lot about what else is needed to support the teams throughout the competition. At the same time, 3 out of 4 of us were writing a little stickies about mentorship. So assigning the mentor to the team. We talked about storytelling, about sharing stories about energy and communities, and things like the storyline behind projects like what we did and what happened in Igiagig, and other ways that you can kind of weave human interests. The human interest side of technologies is awesome. And then we talked about virtual field trips or real field trips, to like the national labs like PNNL, or virtual field trips to places to really just excite that next generation workforce. Yeah, we kept going, but I think that's probably good so other people have a chance to say something here.
Cool, thanks. Nathan, you're the only video I see, so I'm calling on you. Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Nathan.
That's weird. Double muted me. Sorry. The couple things I wanted to highlight was how to engage underserved and increase diversity. And that's kind of coupled with our third question of how do you get more people or schools that aren't associated with marine energy. And what I kind of liked was just having more targeted outreach to, for example, community colleges, to colleges and universities to urban settings, through professional societies that can link you to professors that might be interested. And then, although those schools might be interested, it's the ramp up time that someone said before of like, they might not know everything about wave energy. So why not think about having mentorships and, hopefully in the spirit of MECC that, schools that have a lot more interest or sorry, I shouldn't say interest, expertise or have been in the competition longer can volunteer to help mentor new teams. So new teams aren't just coming in and everyone's throwing all sorts of information on. So yeah, I'll stop there and let other people talk, but I think those were some of the unique answers to the questions that we had.
That's great, thanks. How about Jennifer and Bree?
Yes, so I blew up our responses somehow to the question number 1, like literally do not know what happened to the Jamboard. But as I recall, we were focused on how to increase minority participation in the competition. And we had some good discussion around that. Some ideas included reaching out to technical schools, giving targeted presentations on marine energy, really trying to build awareness and capacity on marine energy topics, and also partnering with minority serving institutions and being a little more strategic about it. I had also floated the idea, I know we've talked about this concept of pairing schools, but maybe a school who has less familiarity with marine energy and is at a different place on the learning curve with a school who's participated in MECC before, with the idea that they might be able to kind of do peer-to-peer knowledge exchange. So that was one of our questions we hit on. The other one was, how can we better integrate MECC into academia? I think that there needs to be, based on our discussion, a lot of connection with industry and making sure what is being taught is relevant and not biased. So there was some discussion around that and how, I don't know if we completely solved the problem on how you reduce that bias within an educational institution, but there are some suggestions on webinars, seminars, trying to get more of the industry relevant, the timely information out there for professors and for students. And perhaps the competition itself can also make sure it aligns around those emerging needs and helps to reduce any bias from a technology standpoint. And those are the only ones we got through. So I'll hand it off.
Cool, thanks. And Ben.
Sure, thanks, Ariel. So great discussion in my group. We got to, I think, 3 questions in the end, but I'm watching other people fill things out. So thanks to my team for continuing to work throughout this discussion. Yeah, there was, I think, an emphasis in our discussion on ways that we could support continuity over multiple years. So playing off the comment that Courtney made before we left for the breakout rooms and then talking to the 2 students who were in our group, it sounds like there's just a lot of effort that goes into year over year maintaining that intellectual capital and maintaining momentum for the teams. And so ways that they could, through the curriculum, through cultivating transferable skills, through, what was the other one that we did here? Supporting the teams during the competition itself, we were looking at ways to keep folks engaged and informed and up on plane, really. And some of the things we talked about were getting the teams up to critical mass where they have enough students to kind of carry the torch forward. An interesting idea was office hours. So giving not office hours with professors, but maybe office hours with folks on the organizing committee, giving people access in an open way, unstructured way, where they, not necessarily Slack channels, but office hours where they could come and ask questions and get answers that are accessible to everyone, but maybe in a less structured way. And then something that came up a bunch was just providing some background information with each of these questions, some background information that could be used by the students, by the faculty, by the engineering schools, by the business schools, whatever, to generate excitement, get people informed, and keep people engaged.
Awesome. That's great. And I know we're just a few minutes over. We just have one last little slide for everybody, and it's just to show the next few workshops, and it just disappeared for me. So hopefully you guys can see it. But anyways, you can still continue to jam and be on that Google Jamboard if you have good ideas. You wake up in the middle of the night and you want to get it out. We would be happy to get whatever you have. I loved the conversations that we had today. I am so thankful for everybody for participating and getting your feedback. We really are just looking, as I said before, just try to make this as good of an educational experience as possible. And if we are open to suggestions, and if you feel free to reach out to us if you think of anything that you'd like to continue the discussion on. So this is a dialogue series for our overall STEM project. So there will be a Marine Energy Educational Resources workshop in May, a workforce assessment and job and economic analysis sorry, that was workforce in July, and the Hydropower Collegiate Competition workshop, which will be in August. And so that's a new initiative that we're hoping to get going in the next year or so. So you are now all on the distribution list, so you'll get more information as these invitations roll out. But really appreciate everybody for their time today and for the input. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Hey, Bree, are you still there, Bree?
I'm still here. Yeah.
Can we talk about those questions that the students raised for me, the Mexican students? Can I call you? Can you stay on the line? How can we do it?
Sure. I can stay on the line.
Can we do that, Ariel?
Yeah, I'm here. You want to talk?
Yeah, no.